Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today I'm looking at the 2026 generic congressional vote and kind of trying to look at it in comparison to the past two midterm elections and its congressional vote and seeing how things kind of mapped out overall and trying to get an idea of what 2026 could look like. Now, obviously we're in May of 2025 and we're in early May of 2025. So things are going to change a lot from now until 2026, but I want to start talking about this now because I think it's interesting to see where things develop. Right now, in the 2026 generic congressional vote, Democrats currently have 45.5%, Republicans have 43.6%. Democrats overall have a net lead of 1.9%. And I'm going to bounce back and forth between showing President Trump's approval rating and President Biden's approval rating at the time during this point in the administration. So again, it's 1.9% for the Democrats now. Based on the latest numbers for President Trump's approval rating at the time of recording this, Trump currently has 45.1% in the Rollcall polling average to 51.1% disapprove. Trump is currently -6 right now in the RCP average. And again, that's as of today I'm recording, which is going to be about May 7th and May 8th, 2025. So that's where Trump is right now. Just to give you a look of where Trump was at this point in 2017, which is when he got elected to his first term, if we go to May 7th in 2017, Trump's disapproval rating was 51.8%. His approval rating was 43.1%. So overall, his disapproval is only about 0.7% lower than it is now, or better than it is now. But back then, his approval rating was 43.1. Trump's currently at 45.1. So even though Trump is underwater by 6 points at this time, it does suggest Trump's actually doing about 2 points better at this point than he was during his first term. The only difference is we've seen the past 2 weeks Trump's approval rating really start to plummet in a very quick way that we really didn't see too much in the first term. But Trump's numbers have started to go down, kind of similar to 2017. But that's Trump in 2017. Now I want to talk about Joe Biden as well. Joe Biden and his approval rating, his fell a lot slower than Trump's did during his term. If we go to May 7th of 2021, you can see here, actually May 8th would be good, Biden's approval rating didn't really start to fall yet. Biden still had a positive approval rating of 54.1% to 41.6%. Biden's grace period had yet to go really away. Then you have to go to about the end of July and August. That's when Biden's numbers really started to get bad. So at this point in time, again, we're going to see around May 6th, Biden was approved of about 12.5%. Let's look at the 2022 generic ballot. Looking around that same time, where Biden's approved of by about 12 points, in the generic vote poll, the Democrats led with 47.5% to the Republicans 42%. Then as you see where things start to track, let's go again to the beginning of August. At this point, the Democrats led by 3.9. Still a pretty large lead, but it was starting to go down very slowly. And then as we get into October and November of 2021, we see the Republicans start to go up and take the lead. Around November 10th, it's tied. And then if you look at Biden's approval rating on what November 10th, what it was, you would find that Biden's approval rating was way in the negatives at this point. Approximately, it would have been negative by about 9 to 10%, about 10 points underwater. It was 42.2% approved to 52.4% disapproved. Now, if we compare that to what Trump is doing at this time, again, Trump is underwater by 6 points right now. So Trump, based on historical precedent, is a lot lower in the RCP polling average at this point in time than Biden was in 2021, but he is higher than what Trump was in 2017. But if you want to go back to that November number, or that November date, we can look at, say, November 10th, 2017. Trump was under 40% at 39.3% back in 2017, 56.7% disapproval. So we're going to have to wait and see, obviously, until November. At that point is a data point to see how that goes for Trump. But again, will Trump be that low come November? We're going to have to wait and see. But then we start to see some movement here. Let's look at the RCP generic ballot for 2018. So again, as of today, if we want to go back to the max setting, as of today, which would have been about May 8th or so, the Democrats had an advantage in 2018 of about 5.5% over the Republicans. As Trump's approval numbers start to go down, the generic ballot gets higher. And then if you go to that November number, the Democrats had a lead of approximately 9.7%. And then as things developed throughout the term, things fluctuated up and down a little bit, but it was never in question. The Democrats clearly had a lead going into the 2018 midterms. The question was going to be, how high would the lead end up going? As we get into the final weeks or so, the Democrats had about a 7-point lead in the generic ballot over the Republicans, and the poll ended up ending with the Democrats up by 7.3. The actual final results ended up being about 8.4%. So the generic ballot only missed the Democratic vote in Congress by about 1% or so. It only underestimated Democrats by 1% on the actual spread of the Democrats winning. The numbers, obviously the polling averages were off, but the overall spread was only off by 1 point. And then we can look at Trump's approval rating at that time and see where things were going. Going into 2018, going into the midterms, around July, Trump was underwater, 43.7 to 51.1. But then going into Election Day, around November 3rd or so, Trump had an approval rating of 44.2%, and his disapprove was about 52.6%. So based on the polls of Trump's first term and where Trump is right now, Trump's approval was only down by about 1 point from where it is today by Election Day come 2018. Disapproval, again, was only down by about 1.5%. So it's only about a 2.5 to 3 point difference between what Trump was at then on Election Day in 2018 in the midterms and where Trump is currently at now. And that's where the concern is for Trump, is at this point, if it's only May of 2025, what will it be like on November 3rd of 2026 when it's going to be a midterm election? And history suggests it should be a very good night for the Democrats. Just to give you another idea, let's look at Joe Biden's numbers as well during this time period. Looking for early November of 2022, Biden's approval rating at this time, he was down about 12.3%. Biden had 42.5% approval rating to a disapprove of 54.8%. Again, at this very moment in time on May 8th, 2025, Donald Trump is doing better than both his first term self and Joe Biden at this point in their presidencies. But the big difference is Trump's only about 5 months or so into his second term. This was over 2 years into the president and the former president's term at the time. So it's really going to be tricky because Trump is very, very much not a conventional president. But based on his first term numbers, Trump's poll numbers from where they are today is, let's see again, it was May 7th was approximately about 43.5%. By Election Day in November, they ended up being right around 44%. So it's going to be relatively, if it stays the same, relatively similar to where they are today. Which means if Trump's at 45.1% today, based on the last term, his approvals by the midterm should be about 45.1%. But obviously, these are huge contingents on what will happen to Trump's approval rating in the next few months. Does the economy recover? Does the economy not recover? Does Trump make trade deals with these countries? Do tariffs help or hurt the economy in the long run? How do all these things play out? It's going to have drastic implications on the midterms for 2026. Right now, as I mentioned, the current generic ballot for 2026, with Trump's approval rating being at -6 where it is right now, the Democrats currently have an advantage of 1.9%. If the midterms come in 2026 and the Democrats only have a 1.9% lead nationally, Republicans should actually feel pretty good about that, because 1.9% for 2026 and the second term of Donald Trump, the Democrats should probably be around that 2018 number, where the Democrats had about 7.3%. The Democrats are talking up 2026 about being this big Democratic wave night, and it definitely could be, but if it's only going to be 2.3% or 1.9% or so, that's not going to be good enough. But again, this is just a snapshot at this moment in time. I would bet by November of 2026, unless Donald Trump turns a lot of things around, the Democrats are going to be winning the generic congressional ballot by a lot more than 1.9%. And I'm making a big deal about this 2026 generic ballot. And you may be wondering, okay, why am I making such a big deal about this? Because the midterm elections are very important for many reasons. Number one being Senate control. Right now on my Senate map, I have Republicans currently favored in 51 Senate seats. Democrats are in 45. If it's a very close election, like for instance, if the generic ballot is only Democrat +2, I think we could very well see Susan Collins win re-election in Maine, Tom Tillis maybe hold on to a very close election in North Carolina, and then given the way the races unfolded in Georgia, it probably stays blue, and Michigan probably narrowly stays blue as well. This would have the Republicans and Democrats essentially splitting the Senate map and keeping it the same way it is right now. For a while, it looked like Republicans would maybe be able to pick up Georgia or maybe New Hampshire, depending on if they got their chosen candidates. They did not. Whereas the Democrats, for a while, looked like they could possibly flip North Carolina or Maine. The jury's still out on those ones. But a generic vote of about 2 points probably wouldn't swing all things that much on the Senate side of things. But now let's go down the pathway of what if it's that 2018 number where the Democrats win the congressional vote by about 8 points or so. How does this map change? Well, for one thing, if that's the situation, if it's an 8-point Democratic win, I think North Carolina goes blue. Roy Cooper running against Tom Tillis would certainly change that, and that would give it to the Democrats. I think at that point, an 8-point win, it might be too blue for Susan Collins, where she actually loses a very close election. This gets the Democrats up to 49 Senate seats, where they're currently at 47. I also think, depending on which candidates run, that could hurt the margin of victory for the Republicans in Ohio and Iowa, 2 states that are likely Republican states, but given a blue enough national environment, could potentially make things competitive, with Texas being a potential wild card as well. Depending on if Ken Paxton defeats John Cornyn in that primary, that could also make things a little bit closer in the actual general election. So that's how things could go on that front if the election and vote is different. As for the 2026 governor's map, right now I think the governor's map is a little bit more, I would say, set in stone and so than the national elections in the Senate and the House. Governor elections are usually more state dependent than nationally driven, but if the Democrats are winning by 8 points, we could certainly see Democrats winning Wisconsin, winning Michigan, which as of right now I think they probably will anyway. We could see the Democratic governor, Katie Hobbs, hold on in Arizona. We could see the Democrat flip the governor's race in Georgia. Kansas is probably going to go red either way, in all honesty, barring a complete and total collapse for the Republicans. But then Nevada, Republican Governor Joe Lombardo, I would say he's favored for re-election, but he won in a very close race in 2022. Maybe the environment's good enough for the Democrats, it ends up being a very narrow flip. Now all of a sudden, what looked like the Republicans could be picking up some governor's races in Arizona and Wisconsin and Michigan and Kansas while holding on to Nevada and Arizona, both of which could flip if it's a very good night for the Democrats, if the Democrats do get that high generic vote out there. And don't get me wrong, as important as the Senate and the governor's map is, the U.S. House map might be equally as important in 2026. Because the Republicans, you need to have 218 House seats to have a majority. The Republicans only have 220 House seats right now. And there are a lot of close races in the United States in 2024 that I've started doing videos on as well, talking about how close they are. Some seats I've done so far, I've done seats right here in, I believe, Colorado's 8th District, Nebraska's 2nd District, and Iowa's 1st District. Just these 3 districts alone, which were all super close in 2024. Let me pull up the House map for you here. This district, Colorado 8, was under a 1-point win for the Republican. Nebraska's 2nd District was under a 2-point win for the Republican, and then Iowa's 1st District was under a 0.5 percentage point win for the Republican. In the Democrat +2 environment, I think these 3 races could flip to the Democrats pretty easily in that regard too. But in an 8-point environment, it wouldn't just be 218 and 217 for the Democrats in the House. The Democrats could probably then pick off a seat where Tom Keene is in New Jersey. Democrats could pick up one of the 2 Senate or House seats they lost in Pennsylvania. Maybe they could pick that off. Maybe they could pick off the other seat they lost in Pennsylvania. You can go across the entire House map where it would go from a narrow House pickup for the Democrats to an 8-point win being a massive tidal wave for the Democrats, and the Democrats not only taking back the House and making gains in the Senate and governor's races, but getting a big majority in the House to really stop everything the Republicans and President Trump want to do. That's why I think this generic ballot thing is typically it goes under the radar and isn't talked about all that much, but it actually could be very important in tracking what the 2026 midterms could end up looking like. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give it a like. Make sure to click subscribe. Leave a comment below. Tell me your thoughts about this video. Thank you so much for watching. Hope to see you in the next video.